I honestly feel like white woman tears are going to be a constant topic of conversation within the Black community. I feel that. I do. Um, what's really interesting is that for the white people that felt some type of way when I made TikToks about the whole Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide situation, um, I really wasn't looking for their opinion. It's like it was never asked. Um, like that was literally just a conversation for Black people, and I don't know how much more clear I could have put that. Like I put hashtags with only the word Black in it. So how did white people find it? It's beyond me. But um, going live was honestly unplanned. This was just a spontaneous moment for me because I am having a moment of insomnia, so might as well just do something slightly productive. So here we go. Um, I have noticed a pattern that I don't find myself arguing with white women though when it came to that topic. I was arguing with white men that were just super macro aggressive about it. But in person, as I'm going about my daily life though, that's when I notice that I do encounter white woman tears. Like, because with Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide, the child actors and one actress from that show, when Mosley weaponized her white woman tears, it's like I want to say almost every Black person knew what it was that she was doing. There was really no like there was no other distinction other than that. But what's even more interesting is that the more that I talked about it, I was like, okay, so let me get this straight. These white men are critiquing the Black community, even though they have a community of their own that they need to check in terms of racism. That's what I find intriguing. I'll never forget this one content creator, well, barely a content creator because he doesn't have enough followers to go live. But anyway, so he was telling me that I just have so much hate in my heart. And I'm just like, we really got to get rid of this safe Black person narrative. We got to get rid of that because I do not identify as the safe Black friend. I will never identify as the safe Black friend. If there is a boundary that you have overstepped, I'm going to say something because that is the only way that you can correct a behavior if you can actually call yourself a friend. And I don't think we talk about that enough. As a society. And I keep going through this with everyday encounters. I mean, one minute I think, okay, I am with a safe person that happens to be white, but then as it turns out, they wanted just I guess, some type of clout of having a token Black friend, and that's not who it is that I am. For example, my ex is a white man. I really thought that he was the kind of white person that would call out other people for their racism. And I would be all like, okay, cool. You understand when I talk about Black people issues because you're with me. You're getting the concept. But then when it comes to how he needs to critique himself, see, now that's where the problem was. And I don't think it's, I don't really think it's talked about enough how it's dangerous for Black people and other people of color to date outside of their race to date white people. I don't think we talk about that shit enough. I'll be the one to say it. Um, I say that as the mother of a biracial child, is that it is not safe at all. Because when it comes to the topic of race, my experience with white men, they will deflect, they will project, they will act heinous as hell. Like, it's hard for me to explain just the level of gaslighting and mental gymnastics that they do in order to prove that what I'm not racist. It's like, bro, it's not a matter of if you're racist, it's are you willing to actively be anti-racist? And apparently the answer to that question is no. And for those of you that have not had the displeasure of going through this, allow me to tell you, my son is biracial. His dad is white, or I guess I should say sperm donor. But the point is that yes, he is biracial. And so what that means is that he has a side of the family that is white. So yeah. And what we're not going to do is treat biracial children as tokens or accessories or, something like that. It's not what we're doing. And unfortunately, a few months ago, my son's white side of the family had to learn the hard way that you're not going to tokenize my son. And I'll explain. So, I had one of my friends drop off my son at his white grandmother's house, and my friend calls me frantically and he's like, oh my God, they have Confederate flags hanging up outside of their house. And I'm like, they have what hanging outside of their house? What? So they thought that I wasn't going to say something about this. This is a macroaggression if ever there was one. And this is what I mean when I say that it's actually dangerous when Black people date outside of our race to date, well, specifically white people. I know there's anti-Blackness within every race, but it's specifically with white people that I have had this experience, is what I'm saying. So in my lived experience, I'm like, okay, so I feel like I had the conversation of racism with these people, but they must have thought that I was fucking joking, because this can't be like like what is going on here? So here's what happened. So I confronted my son's grandmother about this. And okay, so what I'm talking about is having a biracial child while Black, and your son's white side of the family refuse to acknowledge racism, even though, they treated it as like a minuscule thing in the past. And I'm like, okay, we're gonna revisit this conversation again, because it's not going away. So anyway, so when confronting my son's grandmother about this, here's what happens. She starts crying on the phone. This is what I mean by white women tears are not new. So she starts crying on the phone. I am steadily telling her that the Confederacy literally advocated for slavery. You cannot support the Confederacy and think that you're going to have access to my Black child. And I don't know why it is that it's 2021 and I still need to explain this. And so she cries. She says to come get him and all of this. And so, that's what happened. And so literally 2 weeks ago, after no contact with my son, his grandmother comes to my house, knocks on the door, and again, she's crying. because she wants to see my son again. And because they're related, I'm not gonna, if you're actively putting forth the effort to be better, I'm not going to hold that against you. That's how I feel since my son and obviously her being his biological grandmother. And so I'm like, okay, well, thank you for coming over. And now, what do you think that you need to do from here on out if you want access to my child? To which she then admits that she does not know how to be an ally. And that's what it takes at the end of the day, is admitting, I don't know how to be an ally. I don't know. And I'm like, okay, so then let's start there, because you can't expect me to believe that you are going to be a safe space around my Black son if you don't know anything about Black people issues. So it's going to be a very different experience than what his white cousins are going to go through. I didn't make this up. I can only call it as I see it, and that's what happened. And so now I only bring this up because Friday is going to be the first it's going to be the first interaction after a few months of non-communication. So that's kind of what I mean is, with his grandmother, sure, you can cry in front of me, but at the end of the flipping day, I said what I said. And racism is killer. It is a safety issue. It is, I don't know how else to explain it. And then with, there has been so much video evidence that Black people have on their phones when they're just out minding their Black business, and then a Karen pops up out of nowhere and starts being aggressive. And I mean, we actually have to walk around with fully charged phones in order to have people believe us when we say, listen, we were minding our business and this Karen came out of nowhere and then was being super aggressive and then started crying and then was a completely different person in front of the cops when she called them, and things like that. And that these are things that I'm gonna have to explain to my son's grandmother, because she's not gonna know these things, but these are the facts of life as a Black person in America. And this is what I mean when I say that, especially in white spaces, Black people, like especially with dating outside of our race, when specifically dating white people, Black people are not safe. And then as a Black woman, it's not like every Black man has been an ally to me either. And that's where misogynoir comes in, because we do have within our own community colorism, we have texturism, featureism, things like that. And these are all symptoms of white supremacy. And honestly, I am sick of it, but we have these occurrences. And then there is the blatant transphobia, and the list goes on. And if it's like the intersectionality of being Black and a woman, and historically, the women's suffrage movement, racist, and then historically with Black empowerment movements, they've been mostly male-led. And so that's where patriarchy comes in. So it's like, as a Black woman, we are caught in the middle, and it gets tiring. So The mixture of responses that I got when it came to the macroaggression that happened with the child actress from Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide. There was maybe one, I think he was a Black content creator. I'm not really sure. But he said that it wasn't that serious, or, something like that. Like, we're making a big deal out of nothing. And it's like, well, historically and to today, Black people have been the butt of every joke. Or historically, our boundaries have not been respected. So if we then develop this tendency, this mindset to set these rigid boundaries after so many years of trying to, I guess, be respectability politics about it, there's going to be quite a few people that are going to feel some type of way. And not just white people. There will be some non-Black POCs that'll feel some type of way about it because there's anti-Blackness within their communities and they're not used to being held accountable for these actions. Like, why do Black people have to be so sensitive? No, we're not being sensitive. We're holding you accountable. And then the issue with having to explain historically, the issue with having Black friends for the sake of tokenization. And if they do not set these rigid boundaries, well, then non-Black and white people will then think of all Black people as on the basis of that one tokenized friend. And that's a problem. Like, they will see us as a collective and not as individuals. And so therefore we have to act as a collective, ironically enough, in order to get people not within our community to understand that we are setting these boundaries for safety. It gets frustrating, it gets tiring, but it's like this is literally life as a Black person, and then more specifically in my case, a Black cis woman, and it's ridiculous. Another thing that I came across is when I do set these boundaries, something really interesting happened is that I experienced so much retaliation based on some of my TikToks regarding Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide, and it was mostly from white guys. One of which was a literal Confederate soldier cosplayer. He literally had it in his bio, talking about some I'm only talking through an echo chamber and things like that. And I'm just like, okay, so I'm literally saying that I'm not going to debate these topics with you because look at your profile. It's very clear what side of history you fantasize and want to be on. So what would be the point is what I'm getting at. It's more than just opposing viewpoints. If you can't understand that the Confederacy was racist, that an ideology that wanted to uphold the most dehumanizing of institutions, well, then I have nothing else to discuss with you in terms of Black people business. And that's what I found interesting about interacting with white men. If you set the boundary that, no, I don't want to debate this with you because of, well, looking at your content and how riddled with anti-Blackness it is, I don't want to debate this with you because clearly you're not debating to learn something. You're debating just to be divisive. And that's, I'm not going to waste my time on that. You know what I'm saying? So it is an uphill battle. I swear to God. Yep. So, and one last thing before I eventually go to sleep for the evening is, just because a Black person is setting a boundary and saying, no, I'm not debating this with you because of your tendency to be a devil's advocate, not actually wanting to learn anything, that doesn't mean that they don't have anything to say, or that doesn't mean that they don't have their facts straight. It's just that you're not worth divulging any of these topics of conversation to. I can't count on one hand how many times I have been called racist by white people, just white people. And I'm like, just admit that you don't know how racism works. It's not that hard, bro. So that's why it is that I feel some type of way about the safe black friend trope within TV shows like Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide, or what would be another example of the safe black friend? I think Irwin from the Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy. I personally feel like that would be an example of a safe black friend. Like they tend to be overly nerdy to the point where they are just weak, and they are comic relief. They're just like, they don't really add substance to the story, except for, I guess, diversity for legal reasons. But that's just my opinion on that. I don't really know what the rest of the black community feels, because we're not a monolith. So whatever. So well, that was my rant for the evening. So y'all have a good night. If I can turn this off.